as much as big groups.
Yes,
More
exactly.
effect.
I've set my alarm for 6:45 every Thursday.
Yeah, okay. At 6:47, if you.
By the
Okay,
time I get upstairs, it'll be 6:47.
okay. Welcome, everybody. Happy to see the small but mighty group that are here in attendance. Don't have a lot of announcements other than the ones that were in the news and notes. You may have seen that we're looking for a public relations coordinator and a fundraising coordinator. So if you or another member that you know of are interested in that kind of thing, please get in touch with our president, Jane. We do have a new executive. Jane is the president and Holly here is the vice president. I'm the secretary and Peggy is still remains the treasurer. So anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And tonight I'm happy to have Linda Yip with us. Linda's, of course, one of our members. And we are happy that she's going to speak to us about giving effective presentations. And I like her title, 5 Things to Do and 5 Things to Avoid. So Linda, take it away.
Thank you, Linda. Wonderful name. Thank you again to the Saskatoon branch of the Saskatchewan Genealogical Society. Before I start, are we recording?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just in case it was off and then on. Thank you everyone for inviting me to speak about presentations. It is my honor. Before I start right into my tips, I really just want to say, why? Why care? Why should we care about giving effective presentations? And the truth is, your story is unique. Your approach is unique. And the world needs more of your story. Your family is unique. Your situation is unique. How you approach things are unique. And that story needs to be told. Even if you think the subject's been covered, it hasn't been covered by you from your perspective. And we need to hear that. So I started off about, I'm trying to think, the very first time I spoke in public was about 2012. And before that, I had no public speaking experience. And I joined a storytellers group in Calgary. That's where I was living at the time. And it was terrifying. In fact, when I got there, the 8-year-old little girl could tell a story better than I could. And it was humbling, but it was my introduction to storytelling. And I think, so often we don't have an opportunity to speak uninterrupted. We barely have time to really gather our thoughts, never mind stand in front of an audience for an extended period of time and speak our minds, have an opinion, have an opener, a middle, and get to a conclusion. We never get to the conclusion, right? And so since then, 2017 is when I really started leaning into giving presentations. I have done 30 in the past 5 years. And the thing about speaking is that once you do it, you will probably be invited to do it again. And so then I've been invited to do it live and online, in Facebook, and that has led to television and radio and documentaries. And now I'm here to let you know that you can gain confidence. And so in 2018, I had this pivotal moment. Maybe you remember it, maybe you were even there. This was getting started in Evernote at the Saskatoon branch. I look upon this scene with so much nostalgia because we were all gathered in real life, and wow, I miss tea and cookies and all of that. But what I'm trying to say in this presentation is this was the very first time I really felt the effects of giving a good presentation. I felt the message was on point. We had lots and lots of questions, And I thought, wow, that's it. I'm hooked. I'm addicted. So the next year, 2019, Ancestry, I'm trying to think if they asked me to join the board at that time or if it was the year before. But here's the thing that I have never told anyone. Initially, I kind of avoided leaning into Chinese Canadian genealogy. I know now it's kind of a slam dunk topic for me, but I didn't want to be typecast. I didn't want to do that. And now that I'm in it, and I did this presentation for Ancestry, the reason why I highlight this particular one is because it was terrifying. Even though I had done presentations up to that point, this was on Facebook, it was live, it was for an international company. And so it was like an order of scariness, bigger, but I did get through it. The following year, I did this one. If you recognize this picture, it's because you were at the Saskatchewan Genealogical Society and the Moose Jaw branch of where I was keynote, where I spoke on beyond birth, marriage, and death records and the censuses, searching in Saskatchewan directories, and then later we looked at newspapers, where this is not a new topic. This is what I'm trying to say. But what I did is I brought what I felt was a purely Saskatchewan focus to those records. And it was a hoot. The audience was amazing because Saskatchewan audiences are incredibly warm and forgiving. And so when you bring your own focus to a talk, you make it your own. So today we are talking about giving effective presentations, 5 things always do, and 5 things please avoid. Plus, if we have time, I have 3 bonus ideas. So 5 things to do. Always say thank you. Say thank you early in the presentation. It sets off a great tone for a presentation to start it with gratitude. If you're not sure, and it has happened where I have been invited to speak, and I haven't known how to say the name or spell the name of the people who invited me, and so make sure that you have the name of the organization, the people who asked you to come and speak and to hold the mic. And at some point, I like to start off with it, so then I get that out of the way. But at some point in your presentation, do say thank you. Who knows, they might invite you back. Okay, number 2, prepare, prepare, prepare. My current ratio of speaking time to preparation time is a minimum 4 to 1, 4 hours for every hour of presentation. Quite frequently, if I'm being asked to speak on a brand new subject, it'll take twice as long. I sometimes write an outline, and outlines are really good in the way that like an essay has headlines. An outline keeps you on point. What you want to do is you want to try avoiding the embarrassing verbal rabbit hole of, oh yes, I had a story, I was going over there, where was I? I'm completely lost, and you're completely lost, and you're standing in front of an audience. So that's when an outline will keep you on track. Another trick that I do, and I did for this one, is record yourself. It is a really good way for you to see how your talk is coming together, how prepared you are, if there's any sticky points in your talk, and also the reason why I say record yourself as opposed to standing in front of one of your family members is that your microphone and your phone or your computer or FaceTime or Zoom, they are non-judgmental. They can't judge you, they can't speak back. You can look at your own recording in the privacy of your own home and you can delete it immediately afterwards or for the first attempt that it is. And so this really relaxes me to know that, okay, let me just start that again. that did not come out well. And also when I'm a writer, and I like to think that I can speak, but some words do not fall trippingly off the tongue. And some words, when you write them in your presentation and then you go to say them, you might want to change that word for a word that fits your diction. And so prepare. I am not a procrastinator. I'm a person who likes to have her talks ready about a week ahead, because when I come at it again, it's like new. It's like new to me. And in that way, any written work, if it's your own work, after a while, you can't see it anymore, or you can't hear it. But if you prepare it a week ahead and then let it sit, look at it again the day of, things will come to you, either tweaks or changes or anything. Okay. My next hot tip, and actually this is the most important as far as I'm concerned of the entire 5, know who you're talking to. In this picture, I hope when we look around at the 4 different pictures, we have very different audiences. Knowing who you're speaking with and what you're going to be speaking about, whether the genders are predominantly male, predominantly female, predominantly something else, their familiarity with the subject. Now, I'm gearing this talk to people who have never presented or perhaps are not quite comfortable presenting. If I was presenting to the group, say in the lower right quadrant, they kind of look like students to me. I would probably, not change this talk at all, but not this one. But if I was speaking on, for example, DNA, DNA in genealogy is a topic that many audiences are incredibly interested in, including me. However, not everyone has the same level of understanding or knowledge about DNA. And so knowing your audience will help your audience absorption in what you're talking about. It really helps if you're not sure about a topic like DNA to define your subjects. Maybe even have a glossary in your handout. Talk about, for example, the differences between the 3 types of tests and the reason why you would have chosen, say, an autosomal test over a Y-DNA test. Now, if you're not new to DNA, these things feel like baby step subjects, but this is the thing. When you are giving a presentation, you can't assume everyone knows what you know. You know your subject so well, you kind of gloss over the things, you've forgotten all the learning things. But if you take yourself back, for me, that first day storytelling, and I think, oh yes, right. Okay, so the next. When I was in communications at university, we were taught the talk sandwich. Say what you're going to say, then say it, and then say what you have just said. Okay, so there is a reason for this. Verbal information is very hard for people to process. It's really hard for us to digest, actually. We think we are way better listeners than we are. It could be anything like, oh, sorry, I just got a text. I'll be right back. Maybe we're distracted. Or maybe the audience didn't hear you. Maybe you stumbled on a word. Or maybe the word was unfamiliar. And so when you used an unfamiliar word, the audience is thinking, hold on, wait a second, what does that word mean? I can't, but by that time, you're 3 sentences past and your audience is grasping to keep up with you. It could be anything. I'm sorry to tell you that this predisposition for us not to hear each other is only increasing. And so say what you're going to say say what you just said. And okay, so to illustrate, I'm going to tell you a little story. On April 16th, I gave the technology using Evernote for genealogy to the Chinese Family History Group in Southern California. So I was not physically there in the room, and I was teaching technology to an unknown group of people. I did not know their level of technology comfort. And so everything that I did, and Evernote is a program I've been using for about 8 years. And so at this point, trust me when I tell you, it's really hard to go back to square one, to put myself in the shoes of someone who's never seen this before, to slow down, to point things out. And after each time when I said, okay, we open a note, now we've renamed a note, now we're going to delete a note. And even though to me it sounded very basic, one of my feedback comments was, I really liked how you said, okay, so we opened a notebook, we closed a notebook, we renamed a notebook, and we deleted a notebook. Now we're going on to searching. And so repeat, repeat, repeat. Okay, last one of the 5. Eliminate all distractions. I can't tell you how many different distractions there could be, but I've come up with 4 main categories. Device distractions. On your computer alone or your phone, the text, the calls, the emails. And so it is a part of my process when I start. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I take my landline, which I don't know how to mute it, and I move it to a different room. Because even though nobody ever phones me on the landline, the one time they're ever going to call is going to be right in the middle of your presentation. And it will probably be my mother. And so I'll have to have that conversation here. Okay, so device. Pet distractions. If you have a pet, your pets know. They know when you're trying to focus on something else. And so close the door, put the cat outside, put the dog outside, cover the budgie, because your pet is going to be walking on your keyboard, it's guaranteed. Family distractions. Your spouse and kids, if they're in the house with you, they will inevitably choose the time when you are speaking to ask you very important questions about what's for dinner. And you need to warn them that you are getting a talk, that you need some privacy, when you're going to be done. I'm not guaranteeing that this is going to work, because my husband literally walked into my presentation 2 presentations ago, but I'm just saying. And then lastly, if you're expecting a package, ask someone else to look out for the door. You don't need the mental distraction either. Okay, so we just covered 5 things to do. Now we're going to cover 5 things to avoid doing. Don't wing it. Winging it rarely turns out well. The very first time you are invited to speak in front of a group, or present in a boardroom, or maybe defend your raise in front of the board, who knows? It is terrifying. And it gets more and more scary the more important it is. People have a tendency to freeze. And when you freeze, you might convince yourself it's okay if you just wing it. No preparation is probably better. This is what your fear is telling you. And please do not procrastinate your way into ad-libbing. The only successful ad-libbers I have ever seen are stand-up comics and improv. And that is a rare gift. It is amazing. I'm not that person, so please prepare. We have all seen this, right? We have all sat through that presentation. The one where someone is standing up at a podium and they're reading from their slides, and they rarely look up or look at you. And that is not engaging. It's presenting is kind of like entertaining. It's conveying information, and it's a little bit of storytelling. What it should not be is reading. Another reason why you should not put a lot of text in your slide is that your audience has 2 points of focus, your face and the slide. And if you put a lot of words on your slide, your audience is probably going to gravitate towards the slide and read the slide instead of listening to you. And depending on how quickly they read, that could take some time. They're going to be very distracted, and you're going to need to be extra entertaining just to bring their focus back to you. If you have a lot of great material and research, my tip is put it in the handout. And speaking of that, the handout is in the chat, and I have included other resources about speaking in it, which I will not be covering in this talk. Okay, another one. We genealogists, we handle a lot of complicated concepts in genealogy. And one of the most complicated concepts to visualize, even, sometimes for seasoned genealogists, is cousinship. Now, I don't know how comfortable you are, and I'm not here to judge you or shame you, but if you are a person who thinks or is very comfortable with, oh yes, that's my second cousin once removed, then kudos to you. If you say that to me, I will be thinking, first cousin, second cousin, once, right, okay, I think, but by that time, the speaker has long since moved on to their next thing. Please use a chart or a diagram or a picture of, in this case, a second cousinship. Remember that presenting is very visual. And so that's why this presentation is full of pictures. Citations. Citations are not only just for your paper, they're also for your presentations. You are speaking to a curious group of people. We are genealogists. We are practically professionally curious. And this means that we want to know, where did you get that? Where can I get that? Where inside that thing did you get that? You got that at the archives? Where at the archives? Where inside, what collection is the archives? And so what is it? Where did it come from? Where inside the source did it come from? How was it made? How can they find it? Okay, so that's part 1 for citations. Part 2 is most Canadian museums and archives hold copyright for their material. They let you make copies for private research. So, for example, I pulled up this. This is from the Conditions of Service, the Provincial Archives of Saskatchewan Request for Textual Reproductions 2018, when I made a copy from the archives. I am sure that all of you probably read this form and then forgot the form and the text as soon as you signed it and got your reproduction. What it actually says in the Conditions of Service is any copy is to be used solely for the purpose of research or private study, and if you're using it other than research or private study, you may require the authorization of the copyright owner of the work in question. So this means even if the document is about your family, when you are giving a presentation, you need to be quite careful. I think within the walls of the Saskatoon branch of the Genealogical Society, we're pretty safe provided we're not recording, but the more public it gets, the more we are actually in contravention of the form that we signed. Now, I don't know of any genealogist yet that has been sued or like any kind of risk to copyright, but I personally would hate to put together, say, a book and then have that book recalled because I accidentally grabbed a file from an archive that I really didn't have the right to publish. In fact, I literally just did that today, where I wrote to the British Columbia Archives asking for permission to include a photo of the family I'm studying for my genealogical study for inclusion in that study. And I have been given permission to do so. So presentations, unfortunately, just because it's visual doesn't mean that it is not copyright. And lastly, don't panic. Inevitably, something will go wrong. The internet will die. Your computer will crash. Your flash drive will corrupt. Your slide deck will be the wrong version. If you are new to presenting, one or more of these things will happen to you. Always make a backup, make a second copy of your slide deck, print it to PDF, have that on a different flash drive, maybe email it to yourself. And if worse comes to worse, be prepared to give your presentation in a completely different way. So on this note, I want to tell you a story when I was asked to present to the YMCA group here in Saskatoon. And I had my slide deck all ready. It was a new group of 25 graduates of the Women in Trades program. I had all my statistics and all of my bar charts, and I had everything ready. And when I got there, with my computer to hand, they didn't have the cord which connected my computer to their projector. And for that reason, the projector was useless. My slide deck was useless. And I ended up giving the entire presentation using the chalkboard and the large Post-its. But actually, it turned out to be a very effective presentation. They really liked the bar charts and the drawing, and it's more active. Okay, so that was 5 things to avoid. And now, bonus round. If you are new to presenting and the first question that you are asking is, I don't have anything to say. I don't know what I could possibly say, but I've got nothing. Trust me, yes, you have something. You just talk about what you love. I alluded to this earlier, that Chinese genealogy kind of came late to me, and yet it kept pulling me back. And as much as I tried to focus on general French Canadian genealogy, American Canadian genealogy, Prairie genealogy, Mennonite genealogy, and I've done all of them and I love them. But late at night, the stuff that you're researching when you're in bed and you should be asleep, that stuff, that's the stuff that's truly in your heart. And I was researching Chinese genealogy in my free time. And I eventually thought, all right, fine. Even though 3 people are going to read my work, myself, maybe my sister, maybe one other person, I'm just going to write about Chinese genealogy. That's it. I'm going to focus on it. My blog hit 206,000 this week. It is well on track to hit 250,000 in probably next month. Talk about what you love. Explore your passion. The world needs you, not only your passion and your expertise, but the way that you say it. When you are starting out, when you are presenting, you might be terrified of and shy, and you might be thinking, oh, I need to be really professional. No, you don't. No, you need to be you. You need to be authentic, and you need to be you. I think one of the reasons why I really love presenting and why people and audiences engage with me is I tell personal stories. It isn't just the information, but I illustrate with stories. In all of the times that I have been presenting, I've only had one comment that said, you're too casual. You need to be more professional. And I think, you know what? I presented in front of hundreds of people, and most of the time people say, you're really engaging. I got the point of what you were trying to say. And that is the most important part. The third thing is say yes to everything. One of my friends is an internationally recognized public relations expert. And his joke is he will go to speak at the opening of a door. In the beginning, opportunities to speak will come in dribs and drabs, and you don't know where they'll come from. As soon as you step forward to speak, even if everything crashed, it panicked, it was terrible, you will still get another opportunity to speak. Don't feel like that's the only time ever in your life you'll be shoulder tapped or see an opportunity to speak. So say yes. The first time is terrifying. The second time is a tiny bit less terrifying. The 10th time, you kind of got your groove. Remember, the reward for speaking very well is more speaking. So in this talk, I covered 5 things to do. We want to thank our organizers, make sure we're prepared, know our audience, use the talk sandwich, eliminate all of your distractions. The 5 things that we want to avoid are: do not let nerves convince you to wing it. Unless in the audience there is a stand-up improv comic, in which case go for it. Avoid putting too much text on your slide. Save those for your handout. Do not make your audience visualize complex concepts. Pictures are good. Don't forget to cite. Don't panic. And then the 3 things, the bonus: talk about what you love, be you, let your personality shine, talk the way that you're going to talk, tell your story, and say yes, because the world needs you to speak up. We need you to teach us about your passion project. I guarantee you will have a unique perspective on any topic because it is from you. Our families are uniquely our own, and you are just as unique, and your story needs to be told. Thank you. It has been an honor and a pleasure to present.
Well, thank you, Linda. That was great. I used to teach at the university, for those of you who don't know.
I know.
And it's like, there's always a little bit of nerves, even when you've taught for 35 years, and there should be, because otherwise you're not really on your game. But when you say don't wing it, well, okay, sometimes you have to.
True.
Because you forgot your lecture notes at home, but I digress. Anyway, fortunately I had the handout, so you know I was good. But yeah, your points are totally valid. I hope that everyone that's here will want to speak. I mean, some of you already have at our various events, but I'm going to offer this to others to watch. I've taped it or recorded it. So hopefully others will learn from it. I just think it was great. So opening the floor for questions, feel free to unmute yourself and throw out a question or two to Linda. Holly.
So if you're quoting or showing someone a link to a web page and you go to the web page during your presentation, is that copyright infringement?
No.
No.
No. No.
Okay, it's just copies of documents that you're speaking of. Yeah. okay.
Exactly. If, for example, you were showing off Family Search, so let's just say part of your presentation was looking at like original documents within Ancestry, Family Search, MyHeritage, you are effectively showing off their structure and architecture and their products. And so if you were, however, to download, say, that birth record and then plop it into your presentation without any citation information, that's copyright theft, because you have to show, but I mean, we are genealogists. You need that information anyway, because part of being a genealogist is how correct is that information? Where did it come from? Is it an accurate copy? What kind of information is in it? How was that record recorded? And like, I think we've all seen now original records where the information on the original record, as direct as it is wrong. And so if you're going to argue, for example, that a birth record date is incorrect, you really need to think through, well, how did this birth record date become incorrect? And your citation information is going to help you point that way if you happen to be talking about it.
So just let me clarify. If you want to use an example in your presentation, as long as you say extracted from X, Y, and Z, that is sufficient citation. I mean, there's.
I would be careful with that. Canadian copyright laws are quite different from American. American copyright laws, they don't appear to have any restrictions against, say, showing an entire narrow file in a presentation, especially for educational purposes. On the other hand, if you took something from Family Search and put it in presentation and you are speaking to a larger audience, say Roots Tech, then even with a citation, I personally would probably just excerpt the information and a citation. So I wouldn't
Right.
show the entire record, but I would say, here's the relevant bit. And I have done that actually on my websites as well, because it's really hard to show methodology without showing the record. And so I've clipped it instead, because that's not the entire record. That's probably still anti-copyright, but I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for that one.
Okay, I did a little clip in my presentation of something from Scotland's People, which I know they don't want copies.
Yes. And yet, we see records for Scotland's People all over Facebook as people try to get around, the payments for Scotland's People. And that's any sharing of records on social media is a definite no-no. Like, especially if it's behind a paywall. Newspapers, I see that. Like, does anyone have a subscription to newspapers.com and can they get me an obituary for yada yada? People do. And honestly, I did as well in the beginning. So again, no judgment here.
Yeah.
But when I read the terms and conditions and I actually saw a presentation on copyright, I realized, holy cow, that is so not okay. So I stopped.
Yeah, I originally posted some stuff like synced up to Ancestry with some Scotland's People documents, and then I realized, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. So I did take them
Right.
down, but some people caught it for just that whatever day I had it up there.
Right.
Because
Well,
they copied it and said, yeah, but
Holly, live and learn.
Yeah.
Like, you made an honest mistake. You
Yeah.
aren't doing it anymore. And I've
Yeah.
done the same thing. I think we all, in the first flush of genealogy, we're all very generous. We want to share our finds and we're really excited about finding it on Scotland's People. And that's a fantastic website. I did a Scottish tree, a tree with Scottish roots. And I was shocked at the depth and breadth of records that are available there. But the technique is very different because, of course, as soon as you see it, you have to pay for it. So instead of, say, Ancestry, where you can just keep clicking through and you get whatever you want. And has anyone ever hit the Family Search limiter? James, I'll get you in a second. No? So Family Search, maybe it's just me, they hate me. No, Family Search has a limiter on the speed and number of records that you can download from the website because of their privacy and copyright and agreements. And so if you find, for example, that you have a will or probate at Family Search, it's often like a dozen, 15, 20 pages. And I'm pretty quick with a mouse. And so I'll be like, click, download, click, download, click, download. And Family Search hates me. And so I'll be able to do about 3 or 4 of those before I get the, this record is unavailable. And when you see that message, it's not unavailable. It is that you've hit the limiter. And so go away, come back, and come back for the rest of the records. Similarly, if you download more than 24 to 30, you'll hit the same thing. If you get that message, that's why. James.
My question has to do with making your, let's say, your ancestry records public. And are there any implications there? Because, you know, you've got a bunch of stuff, you've got photographs that you've put up there. And I notice, and now that I think about it, Ancestry has something about, if you put it up on our website, we've got it.
Now, yes.
Yeah, what's going on there?
That's a 2-part question. Okay, so first of all, photographs, generally speaking. Who owns a photograph? It's really complicated in Canada. If it's a studio photograph, for example, and I'm not a copyright expert by any means, but the way I understand it, if it's a studio photograph, I'm going to use a specific example. Yu Cho Chow was a photographer who died in about 1960 in Vancouver. And he photographed pretty much all of Chinatown during his decades of photography. His estate owns those photos. And so if you wished, if you got it off the internet and you wanted to use it, technically speaking, you should be acquiring permission from his estate. However, if the copy that you found was digitally recreated by an archive, that digital reproduction is the property of the archive. And so it's the archive that you need to ask permission of. Okay, so that's photographs in general. Okay, now photographs on Ancestry. Ancestry changed tactics somewhere around February, I think. They gave people who had uploaded all these photos the chance to stop or download or whatever, because they were changing policies. They're moving into the same line as Google once had, which was, you know, if you use our services, anything you upload becomes our property. And a lot of people had issues with that and immediately removed their photos, and other people left them. And so what Ancestry is trying to say is not that they're going to use your photos, but rather that in the process of syncing and backing up and all of that stuff, they can't, you know, give you, you don't have the right to have them, for example, remove those photos from their multiple backups. Like it gets into this endless loop of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, the way in which Ancestry's architecture is built, I think you never could, honestly. You never could, if you say, for example, uploaded your great-granddad's photo and then you decided that you didn't want it there, but before you did that, like 10 cousins or pseudo cousins copied it from your tree.
Exactly.
Then you got really angry and you went after Ancestry and said, hey, that's my photo, that doesn't belong to them. this kind of closes that loophole as well, because that is one of the big issues that Ancestry has constantly been dealing with, which is, other people have illegal copies of my photo. And so this now says, well, it's no longer illegal. This is like, you uploaded it. And so if 50 other people copied it and it's now in their trees, that's
Yep.
what you did.
That's interesting, because sometimes I get wiggly flag alerts on Ancestry about hints, say to a photograph, well, I put it up there in the first place.
Yes, but Ancestry can't tell who, like,
No.
Ancestry is not going to be able to tell who, like, if it was first uploaded here, then it was deleted here, but it was copied over here, and then it was like
Right.
copied 30 other places.
They can't trace that.
They can't
Yep.
give you, quote, ownership of
Okay.
that digital copy, because digital copies are not like real copies. I mean, they're proper copies, but unfortunately, I spent an awful lot of time thinking about source records, sources of records, because I'm in the midst of writing an accreditation study. And holy cow, chasing down a record to its original source and where it came from just does my head in.
Yeah. And so basically, then people need to stop and think, do I want this to be public? And if not, then it has to be private.
That's right.
So don't put anything up there that, you don't want everybody else to see.
None of my work actually in Ancestry is public. I use Ancestry for deep research, and I think if, a lot of people use Ancestry as cousin bait, and there's a really good technique for doing that. And it's not to have like your main tree, say, publicly accessible. I personally would download a GEDCOM of your main tree and then just upload it again without, say, the documents, and or just a branch of that tree, and just trim it all back until you have just your cousin collector bait, and then just like feed your tree with 1 or 2 interesting documents. Because if the point is to get your cousins to connect with you, then don't give them all the stuff, right? you want, they've got a DNA match to you. So like, if you have a tree that connects to them, they're already curious. But if they connect to you, they see your DNA match, they figure, okay, for sure, you guys are cousins. I'm just going to rifle through all your tree and grab all your stuff. Then, yeah, not everyone will do that. But unfortunately, people are shy, I think, about meeting strangers. And I don't think people do it to be dishonest. I think it's so much easier because, like, this tree has a picture. I'm just gonna grab it and then I'm on my merry way. Like I don't think there's ill will intended there, but it takes time to develop a relationship on Ancestry. So when I do my work, for example, there is a person who's made a tree. It's been quite useful in my work. And so I write him and say, hey, Jim, I noticed you have a picture of XYZ. Where did you get that from? That's really interesting. And just because you can, right? Because if you could be working on one area of a tree in Ancestry, and your cousin will be working on like something very distant, and maybe you guys can meet in the middle. That's the joy of having a public tree.
I also think that people are collectors. They want to collect all of the, blah, 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 blah. And they're not really thinking, they're not genealogists as far as you're just collectors. And
Yes.
they also want it to be fast. So why not and that's, what some of these cheat things are very helpful when you're trying to identify cousins, but it's also very dangerous because it's like, that's not my great grandmother. I don't care if it has the same name, right? People keep my great grandmother. My grandmother was named Julie Oliash. She came from Hungary in 1923, and yet my heritage keeps wanting me to accept matches of a girl by the same name who went to high school in Indiana. no can do. You know, but I mean, it's their algorithm. But if I wasn't paying attention, I would have all of those things listed too. But anyway, other questions about presentations or anything that Linda's talked about? Just make sure we cover the territory here.
Right. Might get off topic in the Q&A.
Well, I will just point out that I have a record of everyone who was here. So I know that you know how to make presentations now.
Well, I'm just going to change the name on my screen.
Are you? Okay. You can be whoever you want tonight, but
We see you. We know who you are.
any other? Jim? Sorry.
Well, I have a bush. I hide in the bush quite often.
But Linda, this is Jane. I mean, you're correct. The more you do, and the different organizations. But I know Linda and I both have university backgrounds and done a lot of teaching and stuff too. And I mean, the audiences are very different. Whether you talk to a group of senior pharmacy students or some nursing students, or God forbid, some physicians. Hey, Jim. But, or the general public. I mean, and our genealogy group or a group of seniors done a lot of senior stuff. So that point as to who you're talking to is valid, very valid.
I'm doing a getting started in Chinese genealogy coffee chat over 20 this year, and I have to assume that nobody knows anything about Chinese genealogy. So my talks are really good practice. First of all, I control them, and secondly, I get to talk about whatever I want, and they're a really good way for me to kind of like practice this talk to see if it's going to flesh out into like a full talk, or if it's really just interesting to me. And so I find, especially with complicated genealogies, I've been working with another woman who is Jewish, and she's talking a lot about endogamy and DNA and how Jewish genealogy, and for her, has both sides. On the one hand, there's only 3 families in the United States that are that have her surname. So you think, oh, bonanza, because every one of them has to be family. But apparently they only have 5 male names.
Oh. Oh.
And so, son of Joseph, son of Michael, son of James, son of Mark, son of Joseph, and Joseph. And so also they are Hungarian, Russian. And so you've got that Cyrillic language and the spellings in English, plus you have endogamy. And so it turns, something which seems like it should have been fairly simple into something very complicated. So I got to read her accreditation study, like a chunk of it. And peer review is such a great thing because we are all genealogists and we're all intensely interested in what we're talking about. But I don't know Jewish genealogy at all. And I don't know American genealogy. And I'm not very good at genetics either. And so I'm kind of the perfect guinea pig for her to read her paper because things that are just not clear to me, because when you're writing a thing that you know so well, that you've studied, things you don't think to write topic sentences. You just jump right into the paragraph and talk about, this census record said this, and then the birth record said this, and then the directory said this, and a person who's reading your paper is okay, but where are you going with all this? That's fine that you're talking about the records, but what's your point? And so it's been an amazing experience to
Linda, are you doing presentations in Mandarin
No,
or just in English? Eh?
I don't speak any Chinese language, so
Okay,
it would be a challenge.
just asking.
I actually, Jim, if I were going to present about Chinese Canadian genealogy, the language I would need to speak would be Cantonese.
Cantonese. Yeah, okay.
Cantonese. Because
You have a lot of
historic
Hong
migration,
Kongers.
they're all from Guangdong.
Interesting.
Yeah, but okay, so Chinese. Let me just digress here for a second. Oh, so we are studying historic Chinese people who immigrated, 1880s, and they all came from Guangdong province, and they probably spoke either Cantonese, the language of Guangdong province, but probably more likely the language of their district. So 4/5 of those people came from Toisan. Toisan is a completely different language. And so when you're imagining what your name might be, and you're imagining what the language might be, and then you're trying to Romanize that in English letters, you've got, that's three, like so Cantonese, Toisanese, and then English. And then when you are trying to use that information to research in Chinese, you need pinyin, which for years I thought was just Chinese in English. And pinyin is actually Mandarin Chinese in English. So suddenly you need Cantonese, Mandarin, pinyin, Hoisan, and then you've got, of course, the Chinese characters, and then you've got all your variations of English. And so any Chinese genealogist needs about 12 variations. And I haven't even got started on birth names, marriage names, style names, and all the honorifics that happen to a Chinese person during their lifetime. And this is before we get to misspellings. And so,
Interesting.
so when we're talking about Chinese genealogy, the very first thing I say is, before we can even get to records, we need to back up 10 steps and talk about names. Who is your person? If you only know their name in English, you don't know their name at all. And that's really hard for people to accept.
So Linda, I was sitting here thinking that your Hungarian variations, nothing compared to Linda Yip stuff.
I'm pretty good now. I mean, yeah, Stephen was the son of Stephen was the son of Stephen was the son of Stephen.
Right.
And, and occasionally they threw in Janos, but whatever. No, it's still. But Hungarian being such a unique language, I mean, the only one that's close to it is Finnish. So
Wow.
not that I speak either, but it's, yeah.
So how do you get around that, Linda? Like, how do you navigate Hungarian records?
Well, I haven't yet because that's not the branch I'm working on right now. But when Jane and I were in Hungary, in Budapest, on our river cruise, I hired a private guide who spoke English and Hungarian. And fortunately, 2 of my ancestral villages were just an hour out of Budapest. So we had a private driver and a guide, and she took us there. And then when there was an opportunity to go to the town hall, and she jabbered away and translated. And the unfortunate thing is, though, when waiting for a taxi, and the driver comes in all ready to talk to me because my name is Shivagesh, and I went, no, I don't speak the language. Oh, that's too bad, ma'am. And I went, yeah, I know, but when I was a kid, I understood a lot more, because when your grandmother yells at you, it doesn't matter what language it is, you understand it. And so, yeah, and the food, I mean, but once my grandparents had passed away, my dad and my aunt didn't speak much in Hungarian. So
Say something that your grandmother used to yell at you in Hungarian.
oh, I can't remember that part. But I'll tell you a really nice story of an elderly person. My great grandmother, was alive until I was in my 20s, but she was a little Hungarian lady. She stood about 4 feet tall, and anyway, she was visiting one day, and my parents, or my family went over, my brother and my parents, and my mom and I were out on the front porch with her we're going to have, a coffee or a drink or whatever. And I was about 7, 6. And my mom didn't speak Hungarian either. So we're out there and my grandma goes in to get the stuff. And so she comes back and she asks my great grandmother what she wanted to drink. And my great grandmother responded in Hungarian. And my grandmother lit into her and she said, when Linda and Effie are here, you will speak English. And I remember sitting there as a little kid thinking, oh my God, she's yelling at a little old lady. I was gobsmacked that I could be more important than this venerated elderly lady. But my grandmother, she knew what to do. So anyway, yes. Yeah, she didn't yell at either of us that day. She just yelled in English. So that was good.
So I will share with you, my grandmother used to yell "Dasine" at me all the time. And I would just be, I would turn around and I would ask, what does that mean? And she'd say, oh, I love you. Okay. And so I grew up thinking "Dasine" meant I love you, which it doesn't. Spoiler alert. So later, it just came out, I was in my teens and I was trying to impress someone with my Chinese. And I used the same inflection and intonation, "Dasine." And they just fell over laughing and said, well, what do you think that even means? I said, I love you. And they said, I'll kill you.
Okay.
Not quite the same interpretation. Yeah, then they broke it down for me and I've never forgotten it. But when I went back to her and confronted her, Papa, I hear that "Dasine" doesn't actually mean I love you. And then she just laughed.
I can see it.
Yep. Yeah. She was a great teacher of Chinese, not.
One of the advantages of, you were asking about Hungarian records. I have seen church records and a lot of them are in Latin because the priests were, Catholic and they wrote in Latin. So they're not difficult to understand if you've taken Latin, which I have, but also it's pretty easy to translate those into English. But there's lots of reference guides out there for, words and stuff. I mean, I get lost in the various diacritical umlaut thingies, but I mean,
Good for you. Good for you.
Anybody else?
Anybody else with a story about their genealogy research? What have you found?
Well, I've got a story. My grandma used to say "wished" to us. And she didn't speak Gaelic as far as I know, but I think that comes from the Scottish and it means be quiet. And to me, it just makes sense when I say what I've asked my kids and my husband, what do you think "wished" means? Well, my kids knew fairly early, but because to me it sounds like shush. But anyway, it was to be quiet.
Yep.
And I just knew what it meant right from day one. So just like you, Linda, you knew what your grandma was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
All
I'd
right,
add,
well.
well, I was just going to add one thing in time about, that's with talking about speaking and talk about what you love. And oh my goodness, it is so easy to tell who really likes their subject, who loves what they're talking about. They're really interested in it. They know about it. And having years of sitting in various lecture rooms or whatever, or conferences, or you name it. I mean, Linda and I will sometimes chat about some webinar that we've both watched. And I mean, there was one recent one, I think, well, that one was really boring, wasn't it? And it was like it was being read, like lines of stuff. I mean, they were very knowledgeable and stuff, but there was no kind of joy behind it. It was very formatted, and you're sort of going, well, what else can I do while that's on? Maybe I'll hear something of interest. So, but yeah, it's pretty easy to tell if somebody really likes what they're talking about. So
I think the other thing you were mentioning, Linda, of be yourself. And I totally support that. I used to tell new faculty that every time I reviewed them, like, don't try to be me. But also you have to give of yourself too. Like, I remember I taught non-prescription drugs to the pharmacy students. And so I would started the section on cough and cold, and I said, okay, what kind of things did your family do, to make you, get better during a cold? And they're like, oh God, what is she asking? And I'd say, so I said to them, my mother would rub vapor rub on a red flannel piece of cloth and put it around your neck. And it had to be red. Other colors didn't seem to work. And they all laughed. And then when I said, now you tell me what kind of things your family did. And they were quite open about that. So you have to, as I said, be willing to give of yourself. You don't have to tell naughty stories or anything, but using examples from your own family, or using from your own family history, or genealogy. I mean, like you were giving us examples from your talks, and what that kind of background. I mean, it just all makes it click, and people remember it and enjoy it.
I actually think, Linda, as a storyteller, it's the story that we actually remember. It's the mental, the cue in your brain is the story. That's the hook. And then when you follow the hook into the fact, you may then remember, the point of that. And information without a hook, without a reason why, is really just in one ear and out the other.
Mm-hmm.
And in the handout, I put a link for a man who talks about presentations are somewhat like entertainment these days. And to be an effective presentation, you need to not just be informative, but transformative. In other words, you have to take a person's point of view and convince them to try it your way. Because you provide information, but you're not just providing information to talk. You're doing it because you really want to teach or show or share the knowledge that you have. And that transforms your audience's behavior, you hope, if you're successful. And so anyway, watch the talk if you get a chance. It's not very long. And I really liked how he organizes information to become transformative, and I might try it for my next talk. Similarly, Simon Sinek, I gave that link as well. If you haven't seen that one, he talks about your why. That talk has been seen multi-millions of times because it's brilliant. And it's a way to show a visual, a super simple visual that he does in such an effective way. I've never forgotten it. And really good talks will do that, right? If you think back over the great talks that you've heard, you can think, oh yeah, I remember when but if you tell stories are an easy way for people to remember what it is that you said.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so if anybody came in after we mentioned this, the handout is in the chat. So you can download it from there. And I will be, sorry.
Close this out or save the chat.
Yes,
I've
you
got
can
a-
also save the chat.
I've got a question that's not related to the talk tonight. I'm waiting for my DNA results to come back from Ancestry. How do I get notified? Do I have to log on to Ancestry every day, or do I get an email, or how does that usually work?
You should get, you should have registered with your email, like when you registered the kit, and it will then send you an email saying your Ancestry results are ready.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you have to go to Ancestry to
Yep.
get them.
Thanks. I was reading today, just talking about presentations, that a spoken, that, how will I put it this way, from the person that's receiving the information, they get much more from watching the presentation, watching the facial expressions, the visual cues, and that sort of thing. It's the way our brains are wired. If we're just listening to, say, a podcast and the same words are being said, it's not as effective as, and we don't really grasp what's going on in the mind of the speaker as well as we do when we're actually watching a live show, which was kind of interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I actually find my own presentations less effective without my face, which is weird.
Say without your face.
Right. So I've tried recording when I practice.
Oh, yes.
So on Zoom, right, you can shut your video off.
Yeah.
And you can also minimize it and whatever. And I've been experimenting with recording it with just like a tiny little, like, because I feel like my face is distracting in the presentation, but I gravitate towards my own face in my own presentations. And so if I do that, I'm thinking I need to make the face bigger, because you're absolutely right. You're watching the face, you're watching the visual cues, and then you're kind of looking over at the material. The only time I don't do that, when I shut my video off deliberately, is when I have recorded a thing. So in presentations, I don't know if you've tried this on Zoom, but if you've ever hit a link within Zoom, within a PowerPoint presentation, it'll crash a lot. And so the last thing you want to do is, after all of that preparation and work, is suddenly get kicked out of your own meeting. And so instead of doing that, to guarantee that the link will work, because the other part of that, of course, is that the evening that you decide to look at Library and Archives Canada, it'll be down.
Yeah.
Or it'll be really slow. And you'll be waiting 12 minutes for it to finally load the document.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I record that piece and then I throw that into my slide deck. And so instead of live presenting, I'm still presenting, I'm still showing the information, but I've taken out the wild card of whether or not your site is working, or the other thing is working, or, you know, it's glitching, or just all that stuff. And so I did that for the Ancestry presentation because I realized, oh yeah, this isn't working, and I need the information to be very much faster to come through. And the Ancestry presentation was very much a highlighting of what Ancestry has for Chinese records, which, so Ancestry really, you know, wanted to be the star of that show, and rightly so, because they were sponsoring it. And so that's my trick, is I now record all live links. People really do want to see how you got there, what it looks like, how you searched it, what it shows up as. People do screen cap, say this is family search, and then you search in family search, and then this comes up. But I find people want to see every step, how you navigated there,
Yep.
just what it looks like, and any problems, because it's kind of like driving. If you miss a left turn, like it doesn't matter if you navigated all of that right, except for that one left turn, you're not going to get there.
So in other words, you embed a video of what you were doing on the website into your slide deck.
Exactly. I record any and all live stuff.
Okay.
Do that.
Good idea.
The
Good
exception
idea.
being, last Saturday, when I was teaching Evernote for genealogy, because there was no PowerPoint presentation, it was entirely looking at the web version of Evernote for the talk. That was entirely live. And so we did everything live
Right.
because it also, people had specific questions. And so in real time, we would answer those questions. But holy cow, I tested that and tested it and tested it. Like I've been testing it since November, just to make sure. Like, because I mean, they hired me for a 2-part talk. And so I needed to make sure for sure that it was going to work across PCs, Macs, and that kind of thing. But they said it was a bit of a risk for them. They had never done like a workshop style talk virtually before, and they weren't sure how well it was going to go because, of course, teaching technology is very difficult if you can't see the teacher, right? The teacher's not at your computer. We only, like anyone who was at that workshop, like it's difficult. But so for that one, I decided to take the lessons from that talk, that workshop, and I based it only on live, and the handout was like a textbook. Like I wrote a 38-page handout, and the beginning of it was, you saw, like, we're not spending any of this hour on the reasons why you might want to adopt Evernote. That's recorded. Go look at that recording. We're going to hop straight into, we're going to do this. And then I started at, step 1, this is like the web, and this is what it looks like, and this is what the interface is. And my husband, who teaches at university, gave me a really good tip for this, because when you're teaching a platform like that, it's unending. Learning outcomes. I set 6 learning outcomes. We're going to do this, and we're not going to do any of this other stuff, because we need to make sure that everybody gets these 6 things. And so the feedback I got from that was, it was, even though to me it felt very basic, to them it was like, wow, that's a lot of information. But they have a handout now, so they can go at it step by step. That's what I did. I went through the entire handout. Now we're on page 25. Now we are on page 30. Now we're on 32. Now we're going to be starting a new notebook. That's page 34 in your handout. But yeah, that's the only reason why it worked.
Cool. Okay, anything else, folks, before we sign off? And
Oh, don't sign. I've got a little mini show and tell that I've been saving until the end.
It's really end.
It's a great, the best discovery I've made in a long time, and it's nothing to do with genealogy whatsoever. But I want you to imagine the combination of you're outside, it's a cold day, you have a mask on and you're wearing your glasses. And then you walk into a warm building. This is a problem because you immediately fog up. And when you take your glasses off, because they're so fogged, they're no good. You can't see anyway. I found a product. Here, I'll just give you a little up close on the screen.
yes.
And these are, maybe others have heard about these, but these are wipes that you put on your glasses, and it prevents fogging. Anti-fog cloths, they're little cloths in here. There's a little package of them. I got them from the ophthalmologist's office. So that's my little discovery of the day.
Thank you.
And we'll get some more cold days that I could try it on, see if it works. Just a tip.
Good to know. I tried those. They work, not as well as I wanted them to, but that's okay. I'd be interested. They're a different brand than what you have, so we may have to compare notes.
Okay.
Okay.
It was lovely
Maybe I'm
to
just
meet everyone.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Linda. That was fun. Enjoyed the small group, getting able to discuss things, and we'll look forward to your next presentation.
Thank
because there
you.
will be one, right?
Pardon me?
Right. I'm going to say good night, everyone. Thank you for
everyone.
coming, and we will see you again.
Night.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank
Yep.
you.
I'm going to turn my recording.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you and good night.